Hello and welcome to the bike show. Now, as it seems my colleagues have not yet arrived, I think I should get things rolling. We are at Four Ways Motorcycles here in Four Ways, surprisingly. And if you're thinking that I might be slightly overdressed for presenting this show, well, there is a good reason, so have a look at this.
Motorcycles, as I'm sure you all already know, are the fastest vehicles you can buy on the planet. Hypercars, supercars, rocket ships, spaceships, nothing comes close to what these things can do with a big engine and two wheels. But if I asked you to say, what is the fastest bike you can buy? Well, I have a feeling you'd probably be thinking of something like this. The Kawasaki Zx10R. This is your traditional superbike, a normally aspirated inline four-cylinder engine producing 200 horsepower and 112 newton meters of torque. It weighs just under 200 kilos fully fueled, which means it's light and it's very powerful. And this sort of bike is good at going not just in a straight line, it can handle any sort of corner you want to throw at it as well.
There is, of course, another way of going extremely fast, and that is to make all the numbers bigger. Here is Kawasaki's ZX10R 1400. 400 cc's more than the ZX10, about another 50 newton meters of torque, although it produces the same power. However, it is carrying 65 kilograms more, and as you can see from the wheelbase, it is quite long, so it's not necessarily going to be as good in the turns. However, looking at the slippery bodywork, this bike was built for one thing only, and that is speed in a straight line.
If we're going to talk about performance motorcycles, we have to include this. It's the Kawasaki H2. It is the first production motorcycle to have a supercharger. It is the most mental production motorcycle ever built. And it is also the winner of this year's Pirelli Bike of the Year. It produces 210 horsepower with the ram air, 140 newton meters of torque, and weighs 235 kilograms. Now, does that make it a track racer like the ZX10 or a high-speed cruiser like the ZX14? We'll have to find out.
The ZX10R is the bike you'd choose for putting in the quickest lap time, and its recent racing heritage proves how good it is at doing exactly that. It is once again World Superbike Champion in the hands of Johnny Ray, and we wouldn't bet against the same rider taking next year's heavily updated ZX10 to another title. This is a physically small bike next to the two top speed kings, so is considerably lighter, and as a consequence it can feel a bit of a lively handful when you really give it the gas. And that's something that we like. Well, at least Don and I do. The ZX14R, or the ZZR 1400 as the badging says on this model, is at the other end of the scale from the 10. Heavier, longer, more softly suspended, and with nearly another 40% of engine capacity to play with. There's a less sophisticated traction control system, but an experienced rider will never need it because the 14's seriously smooth engine is entirely predictable and very easy to ride. With more claimed torque than even the supercharged H2, the biggest and technically the oldest bike here could still raise a few eyebrows. Which isn't really necessary because our eyebrows were completely blown off the last time we rode the H2. Numbers alone, which are impressive but not really groundbreaking, simply do not convey what this bonkers motorbike feels like to ride. It is as wickedly fast as it looks, and it looks pretty brutal to us. That's not to say that there isn't a gentler side to this beast. I even lived with one during a week-long heat wave, and it wasn't as painful as you'd think. But it isn't exactly a comfortable tourer either. The riding position is as extreme as the ZX10's, and the suspension even firmer, so make no mistake, this is a bike where ultimate performance takes precedence over practicality. We want to know which bike has got the best acceleration. That means roll-ons from 60 km/h in 6th, 3rd and finally 1st gears. In 6th, the H2 and ZZR are pretty evenly matched, with the 1400 consistently getting an early lead with its perfect fueling. The ZX10 is, unsurprisingly, nowhere. Its engine needs lots and lots of revs. In 3rd, the results are pretty similar, though the 10 is closer and the H2 shows it likes revs even more than the ZZR 14. From 1st gear, the bikes are all more evenly matched, with the ZX10 just about keeping up with the ZZR, though ultimately the H2 has always got the edge. Just. What is noticeable is whether the revs are low or high, the H2 will instantly provide massive acceleration. The other two have noticeable sweet spots. Stopping a bike that will do in excess of 300 kilometres an hour and 0 to 100 k's an hour in well under 3 seconds is obviously, well, quite important. Thankfully, all these bikes have ABS, so getting them stopped from 120 k's an hour should just be a matter of mashing both brake levers as hard as humanly possible.
So that was a bit of a surprise to me, to be honest. A surprise that all of them stopped so incredibly closely to each other. I mean, look, essentially, they've all got the same braking distances. The ZX10 was exactly as I expected, light, nimble, fairly stable under the brakes, didn't do anything too unexpected. The H2, on the other hand, is about another 30, nearly 40 kilos heavier, and that felt a bit squirmy and wriggly and very slightly worrying when I jammed both anchors from 120 k's an hour. The biggest surprise, though, is this. The ZX10R 1400, long, low, quite softly suspended, hit both brakes, remained an oasis of calm.
Some Ferraris had thoughtfully dumped oil all over Red Star Raceway the day before our arrival, leaving us with just the one clean corner. Unfortunately, it's the most demanding corner on the circuit. Fortunately, we've got disposable Don. He's forced to get his knee down on our nearly 700,000 rand threesome and report back. The ZX10, he says, is good fun and feels easy. The H2 needs a lot more rider effort to get the same results, while the ZX14 surprises once again, not needing the effort of the H2 and not feeling like a touring bike with soft suspension, which it actually is.
Well, that's it. Our testing of these high-performance bikes is over. All that's left to do is head back to the studio as quickly as possible to perform our usual, well, let's be honest, shallow and meaningless analysis. Let's get on with it, lads. Last one back's the best bloke here by far.
Okay, well, we've made it back to the studio, and I think we've found out that actually extreme performance does not mean extreme comfort. But apart from that, what have we learned from this test?
We have learned that you can go very quickly on a range of Kawasaki's, but underneath the skin, they're all very different. They deliver the same levels of performance, near as damn it.
Yes.
But they do it very, very differently.
I have to say that, for me, there is no substitute for cubic inches. So the ZX10R, the performance of that, for the price that you're paying as well, compared to the...
189,000 rand.
Compared to 310, that's so much performance for a hell of a lot less than that. Although the performance of that does feel madder than
I was going to say,
ZX10R.
okay, yeah, no substitute for capacity, except if you've got a really big supercharger.
I wasn't saying
But
what
didn't it surprise you, Don? I mean, you and I have raved about this. We were some of the judges who made... In fact, I think even Harry did. We made it Pirelli Bike of the Year. And that was because it felt so damn fast, and we swore it was faster than anything else. But we saw the results. The ZX14
I've had
is
a lot
there.
of people come up to me and say, but how can you say this H2 is so good? Look at the spec sheet, it's not that great. We kept saying, but when you actually ride it, it's something else.
Because the spec sheets are all remarkably similar for all three bikes. All got 200 brake horsepower. OK, the torque's a bit different, and the weight. But, I mean, the performance is remarkably similar.
Well, it is even on the ZX10. Look, as you saw from the roll-on test, it really does get beaten into submission if it's sixth or third. But all this wants is a much smaller. It's a 1,000cc normally aspirated, no supercharger, no massive capacity. Give it the revs that it wants, and it's just about there as well.
And show it a corner as well. And it's
yeah, and then it really is away.
The ZX10R surprised with how nimble and nice
It's always been a sweet handling thing, but you did the
look at
chorus.
how it's 65 kilograms more than the ZX10. It does not feel 65 kilograms heavier when you actually go around a corner. In fact, the only thing that really did let it down was the suspension. But if you ask any ZX14 owner which they'd rather have, I mean, a hard ride or plush, comfort.
Yes.
Which bike would you have out of the ZX14 and the H2? Especially if it's coming out of your own pocket.
Oh, well, it's no contest.
130 grand, but I tell you what, the H2, as you said, it's so much more than a spec sheet. It's all about feelings.
I don't care what the roll-on takes. That feels faster.
I eat beans out of a can for a few months, but I'll have an H2. So
Yeah,
who
I
cares?
think we all agree it's the H2. That's
The H2 is amazing, but if you haven't got all that much money, then the ZX14 is a very realistic alternative.